Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Theo Law Show, bringing you all the experts and leaders in our communities, sharing their knowledge and insight so that you can skip the learning curve and fast track your success in life and business. Today, I'm super excited to have my friend Solon Hu. He's a solicitor specializing in property and strata law. He's also the head of Conveyancing department at Sarvaas Ciappara Lawyers. Solon, thank you so much for your time today.
No worries, thank you for having me.
Today in our interview, I'm going to ask you some questions from our audience around the legal aspect of conveyancing and property sale.
No problem.
So, let's get started. First of all, I would like to ask, how did you get into law? Can you tell us more about your background?
Sure, so I started off as a high school teacher, majoring in English and history, but I've taught all sorts of stuff, like sewing, dancing, music. I've taught all of it. Eventually, I decided I want to do something more. I want to help people in another way. So I decided to study law and become a solicitor, and now I'm here.
Awesome. Solon, you are also a local, right? You went to the school in the St. George area.
That's right. I went to primary school around here, high school around here, and I've lived and worked for most of my life around the Hurstville region.
Awesome. So now, can you please give us a quick introduction of what exactly you do?
So I'm currently working at a firm called Sarvaas Ciappara. They focus more on building defect litigation, strata law disputes, and I'm coming in there with my background from a general practice, like conveyancing and all other legal matters. I'm bringing in my expertise into that field, into that firm, and I'm the head of the conveyancing department over there.
Awesome. Solon, so what exactly is property conveyancing? How does it work?
So conveyancing is basically the area of law that deals with the transfer of the title from one person to another. So conveyancing deals with in terms of the transfer of title, it touches on many areas of law. It could be a simple transfer between family members. It could be a transfer from a purchase and sale. It could be a transfer from a family law dispute, or even from a loan, or even from a financial aspect of it as well. So the conveyancing is just basically about the transfer of title from one person to another.
Right. So what type of property do you specialize in?
So from my many years working in conveyancing, I've done a lot of residential and commercial conveyances. In terms of residential, I've dealt with existing, I've dealt with off the plan, I've dealt with house and land packages, both in New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria as well. And now I'm starting to touch into the ACT.
Fantastic. So can I ask you, in terms of transferring title conveyancing, can I do it myself, or I have to engage a solicitor or conveyancer?
I basically tell all my clients this: if you want to do something yourself, you can always do it yourself if you want to. However, the real question is, do you want to do it yourself? Okay? Are you equipped with the knowledge and expertise to go through the contract, read the documents inside, understand not just what's in it, but also contemplate how it will affect you in the future? But now, given with the introduction of PEXA, it is a little harder for you to do it yourself. So it is always recommended to get an expert to do it for you.
That's right. So there's no requirement for you to get the help of a professional solicitor, but the question is whether you should.
That's right. So if you've got the experience and you've got the knowledge to know how to do it, you can easily do it yourself.
So the question is, should or should I, rather than can or can I?
That's right.
Okay, Solon, you also can you also tell us the difference between solicitor and conveyancer?
So the difference between a solicitor and conveyancer is that, let's actually look at the similarities. Okay, so a conveyancer is actually a professional who's licensed to actually deal with conveyancing. Okay, and that's all they do. Okay, they're quite specialized in that. A solicitor is usually, well, they should be more familiar with the law. The solicitor should be able to deal with more complex transactions. Instead of they should be able to deal with more complex transactions rather than what a conveyancer can do. However, that being said, I have seen some conveyancers who are better than solicitors. Okay, so whether you should choose a solicitor or conveyancer shouldn't be about its title. It should be about who is willing to help you, who's willing to put in the time to assist and look after your best interests. So it really doesn't matter whether it's solicitor or conveyancer. However, what you might want to consider is that because a solicitor is more familiar with the law, they may be able to advise you on the terms in the contract, tell you what happens if there's a dispute, tells you what happens when there's a problem, whereas a conveyancer may not be able to answer those questions.
Right, so Solon, you're saying don't judge a book by its title, right?
That's right.
But I think with solicitor, it takes a longer education
Yes.
for you to be able to call yourself a solicitor, right? To be able to register
That's
as
right.
a solicitor. So there's still a difference between
There
a
is.
solicitor and conveyancer. That's good. All right. So my next question is, what are the top 3 things buyer should be aware of when reviewing the contract of sale?
So a buyer, when they are reviewing a contract for purchase, so think of the contract as it makes up in different components. The first component is the first couple of pages, which is about the particulars, like who's the seller, who's the agent, who's the solicitor, and which property are you buying. The second part of the contract is the conditions, okay? So each law firm has their own different set of special condition. Each property may come with additional special condition regarding that specific property. Then after that, you have the plans, you have the title search, you have things about documents regarding the easements, about the property itself. You also have the council certificate to also consider, bylaws as well. So essentially what the buyers need to do is first of all understand what they are buying and why they are buying it. Because if you're buying a property for the purpose of building a granny flat or making extensions to a property, you want to know whether you can do that. You got to look at the council certificate, you got to see where the pipings are to make sure you can do it. If you're buying an apartment, you want to make sure the bylaws are okay. You want to make sure that the strata levies are okay. You want to make sure that the owner's corporation is functioning properly. So the contract, in order to know what to look out for, you need to know what you're actually buying the property for.
All right, Solon, my next question is, what is the fee, charges, or disbursement involved in property conveyancing?
So generally in conveyancing, there's a couple of components to the fee structure. You have your professional fee, and you have the GST part, and then you have the disbursements. So generally speaking, solicitors will charge about $1,500 to about $2,500 or even $3,000 for a conveyance. And then the disbursements and GST are a separate component that's on top of the fee. We charge a very reasonable amount. We're not the cheapest, but we're also not the most expensive. We make sure, we give value to our clients.
Sounds good. And can you quickly tell us what exactly is disbursements?
Disbursements are third-party costs. So when we are doing a conveyance for a buyer, for example, we got to order council certificates, water certificates, strata levies, notices. So we got to order those documents, and those at first will cost the firm money because we're buying it first. So think of it as you're reimbursing us, and that's disbursements.
I see. So Solon, with the fees and charges, does it vary based on the property price?
The legal fees?
The legal fee, does it varies with the property prices?
It does, it actually does. The reason why is when you're buying a standard residential premises, like a normal apartment that's, $600,000 to $1 million, we go through a usually very standard procedure. But if you're buying a $7 million property, you want to do as much due diligence as possible. If you miss one thing, it can be a problem that's worth more than $1 million. So that's why we actually got to have to put in more effort, more checks, more steps in place when you're buying something that's more expensive.
Awesome. All right, Solon, let's talk about let's answer some of the questions from a seller's point of view. What does a seller need to prepare for when they want to put the property on the market for sale?
So the vendor needs to actually have a contract and have it ready for the agent in order for the marketing process to begin. So generally, what we need as solicitors, we need a copy of the council rate, water rate, strata levies, land tax certificate, if applicable. And then we have all the details to prepare the contract. And generally for us, we have about a half a day turnaround, and we can prepare a draft contract out for the agent, as long as we have all the details needed.
Okay, so it only takes half a day.
That's right.
To prepare a draft contract.
Draft contract.
All right, and also usually when we sign the contract of sale, if anyone who have bought the property before, there is an option for you to choose whether you want to be, if you're buying with someone else, whether you want to be as tenants in common or joint tenants. What are they?
So joint tenants, think of it this way. If you're buying a property with more than one person, you and the other person own the whole property together. It's not about shares, okay? And how it works is that the surviving person takes the whole entire property. So if you have on your will that my share goes to my kids, it won't go there. It'll go to the surviving joint owner, which is usually, say, your partner, for example. Tenants in common is a way of holding the property based on shares, based on the percentage of shares. So normally it's 50-50, but you can always choose, say, one person hold 90, the other person hold 10. And similar with the will situation, you can actually put down in your will, you want your share to go to a certain person when you pass away, and it will go that way.
I see. So Solon, joint tenants usually happens between couples.
It's more common, it's very common with married couples.
Married couple.
Yeah, and however, I have seen some married couple who select tenants in common in unequal share to maximize the tax benefit. So one person might want to hold 90 so that the other person who earns more holds less. So it just depends on the situation.
Smart. So it's actually also affect the tax and how you structure your property portfolio.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Can look into that next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And my next question is, Solon, what is the main difference between different property titles? For example, Torrance title, strata title, etc.
Yeah, so there's a number of different ones. So Torrance title, strata, company, there's even community title, qualified, and even old system. So there's a lot of different ones, but the main ones that we deal with are Torrance title, which is usually to do with land, like a plot of land. Strata title is apartments and high rises. And then we have a funny thing called community title, which is like, think of an apartment but flat on the ground. You have many individual lots of land, but part of a community scheme. And the other ones like old system, qualified title, company title, they're very old. So you don't normally see that around as much these days.
Wow, interesting. So next question is for the audience who is thinking of buying property interstate. Do I need a different solicitor when I'm buying interstate?
The answer is yes and no. Solicitors, they can act for you on interstate purchase or sale. They can. The question is, do they have the expertise and do they want to? For example, even though different states, their procedure are pretty much the same, but there's little differences. Let me give you an example. Cooling off. In New South Wales, cooling off, the standard is 5 business days from when the contract is exchanged.
Yes.
In Victoria, cooling off starts as soon as the buyer signs the contract. So the vendor hasn't signed the contract yet. When the buyer signs the contract, and it's only 3 business days. Queensland, cooling off starts after the contract is exchanged and after the buyer has received the copy. So the contract can be exchanged. But if the buyer doesn't see the contract for like another 5 days, cooling off hasn't started yet.
I see.
So even though the procedure is similar, there's little differences.
So do you recommend using the same lawyer or solicitor when buying property in interstate?
Only if they can deal with it. If they can, stick with it. If not, find one who can.
Absolutely. All right, so this question is for some of our overseas buyers. Right now, under the current policy, can I buy property if I'm not permanent resident or citizen in Australia?
Yes, you can, subject to obtaining FRB approval. So before you even buy any property, you need to get an approval from FRB. There is a cost in relation to the application for it. It is a little costly. I think it's roughly about $5,800 if you're thinking of buying a property that's under $1 million. And then if it's between $1 million to $2 million, the cost of that application then increases to about $10,000. So as long as you got the approval, you can buy it.
Another question, Solon. Sometimes we hear when we're looking at properties, we hear the agent says, deceased estate has to go auction. Can you explain what is deceased estate?
Deceased estate is basically when the owner of that property has actually passed away and the executor is actually in the process of trying to sell the property. Okay, so that's what deceased estate is.
And anything as a buyer should be aware of when buying a deceased estate?
Yeah, so with a deceased estate, from a buyer's perspective, you want to make sure the executor is able to sell the property. So when someone passes away, the executor needs to obtain a probate or a letter of administration. That process can take a little while. So from the buyer's view, you want to make sure, number one, they're at least in the process of applying for it, or number two, have already obtained it. So then it doesn't drag out the purchase process. It might even be prudent to have a clause in the contract to say, if the probate is not obtained by a certain date, the buyer has the option to terminate the contract, so you don't get stuck into something that can go on for a long period of time.
Absolutely. All right, Solon, finally, before we wrap up our interview, recently we hear a lot about the cladding and the flammable cladding issues happening in Sydney. Do you know what's going on?
So let's look at it this way. Let's look at what cladding is, okay? Cladding is basically just the materials that builders use where they put it on the external side of the external outside of the property, usually for aesthetic purposes, try to make the building look nicer. What happened is that the materials that were used back years ago turns out to be quite flammable. Based on current law, if the materials that they've used consist of 30% or more of a material called polyethylene, then it's basically quite flammable and it's not fit for purpose. So what happened is that there's been cases in the past where apartments has lit up in fire and caused a lot of quite a bit of a scare. What's happening now is that because of the new laws that came in, which says those cladding are now illegal, the owners corporation now has to arrange for those cladding to be removed, replaced, or do something to get rid of it, okay? But the cost to actually do that is very expensive. So you can have a very small section with cladding, but to actually build a scaffold to actually reach there to do the work can cost a lot. And it's so much that the owners corporation has now decided to basically chase the builders, chase the previous developers to try get them to actually make those rectification work. And the good thing about the firm I'm working at, we've actually been getting very good results in terms of dealing with the builders. We act for the owners corporation, trying to get the builders or the developers to come back to either rectify the issue or to pay a lump sum to the owners corp so that they can arrange for someone to come in and fix those cladding.
I see. So your firm also handle these strata claims.
Yeah, so think of it as there's a couple of different arms in the firm that I'm working in. We've got someone who's very, very good with strata law, and we've also got people who are really good with building defect litigation. So the cladding falls into the building defect litigation. And then with apartments where there's any bylaw problems, disputes between like lot owners, we've got a lot of people who can help everyone.
I see. So Solon, in regards with property conveyancing, if that building that your client is buying into has an outstanding cladding issue, then it's actually also quite important for the legal representative, solicitor or conveyancer to explain to the client what's actually going on and how to minimize the risk when they buy.
That's right. So unfortunately, the issue with buyers is that there's not much an individual lot owner can do relating to cladding, because the cladding material is on the outside. And on the outside, that's common property. So it's actually the job of the owner's corporation. So think of the lot owners collectively, it's their responsibility. So what the buyers need to be aware of is how bad is the cladding, what's been done, what's going to be done, and how that would financially affect the buyer. Because would it increase the strata levies? Would the owner's corporation have to levy special levies? How long and how much?
Right. Okay, Solon, thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you so much, Theo.
Cheers.